Pastor Gary again. I'm back with a little bit more on types of literature. This time we're going to look at the New Testament. Alright, if you haven't seen the Old Testament video yet about types of literature, go check it out. Or you can watch this one and then check it out at the end. Your choice, but you might learn something along the way. We're going to look at books of the New Testament. And again, it's important to understand that the Bible is not a book, it's a library of books collected together and organized in a way that will make it easier for us to hopefully understand and find its place in our life. We start off with the fact that the New Testament is divided into 4 sections, much like the Old Testament is, and similarly organized. At the beginning of the Old Testament, you have the Torah, or the books of Moses, or the law, that is really preeminent. And in fact, the whole section is organized that way, by the most important first. Something we'll see that comes to play into the organization of the Gospels. For the first section of the New Testament is, in fact, the Gospels. Most people know Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the Gospels, the good news. Euangelion is the Greek. And these books have come to be organized in a way that reflects the church's value on them as they came into development. The next section of the New Testament is history. And just like in the Old Testament, or the second section of history, so it is in the New. But in the New Testament, there's only one book of history, the Acts, or sometimes the long name, the Actions of the Apostles. In the Old Testament, there was many books of history, but in the New Testament, just the one. And from there, we go on to our next section, which is the longest section of the New Testament, called the Epistles, or the Letters. Now, the Epistles, or the Letters, are divided generally into 2 sections. The letters by Paul, that would be Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon for sure. Hebrews comes under debate. There are those who believe it was Paul, there are those who argue it was Apollos, and there are those who have a 3rd and 4th and 5th opinion. We're just going to leave it at the end of Paul's writing because that's the reason it's at the end of Paul's writing, because the debate in the early church as to its authorship. I actually hold out for Apollos, but it's not going to bother me if it ends up when I get to heaven and Paul goes, "It was me. Did you not recognize the writing?" But there are several points on each side that lend credence to the argument for being written by Paul, and those written by Apollos, and those for others. But it falls at the end of Paul's writings for that reason. Paul's letters are written primarily to groups of people. To the Romans, which means to the church at Rome. To the Corinthians, which means to the church at Corinth. Or to the Galatians, which means to the church at Galatia. And for all those that are generally written to groups, they are letters that were meant to be read publicly to everybody. Now, there are some letters that are written to people individually, like Titus and Timothy, that are personal counsel from Paul to someone that are coming up as a teacher, leader, or preacher to the new burgeoning church. The second part of the letters are letters that are written by other authors. So you start off with James, and then you have 1st and 2nd Peter, and then you have 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and Jude. And those letters from Romans to Jude, that comprises the letter section of the Bible, often just called the epistles, because epistle is a fancy old word for letter. Last but not least in the New Testament is apocalyptic. And the book of Revelation has a unique part. Though there are apocalyptic passages in the Old Testament, chunks of Daniel, parts of Ezekiel, and parts of Isaiah, the book of Revelation holds a special, distinct place. The book of Revelation comprises a message to the early church in symbols and poetry and music, what I call verbal algebra. In other words, things that aren't just what they say, but like an allegory or parable, mean so much more as well. And again, while there are sections like that, large sections in the book of Daniel, or in Ezekiel, or in parts of Isaiah, the book of Revelation stands alone in the sense that the entire book is comprised of that material. So that completes our look at the New Testament books. A couple of caveats. Here we go. First off, again, like the Old Testament, the books are sectioned chronologically in the order they were finished. And that is to say, generally, almost always, right? Romans was written, and then Paul wrote 1 Corinthians. He finished it, and then he finished 2 Corinthians. But before he finished 2 Corinthians, we're pretty sure he wrote Galatians and possibly Ephesians. But we kept 1 and 2 Corinthians together because they were both addressed to the same church people. But along the way, you have different ones that were started and finished, and other things overlap. And now you come to something rather unusual, and that is in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they are not in chronological order. Though John is the last one, and Luke, we believe, is right before that, Mark was written first. Then why is Matthew the first? Because the church felt it preeminent. In Matthew, we have the Sermon on the Mount, though you have shades of it in Luke. On Matthew, we have how to deal with erring brothers and things that were important to the church, and how to deal and warnings against hypocrisy, and how to deal with different things that might arise. Prophecies about the end times, the destruction of Jerusalem, that ended up being so pivotal to those who survived because it was a warning that came true. So everything about Matthew signaled to the people that this was a super important book. And maybe they just didn't understand the relevance or the importance of John or Luke. But Matthew gained preeminence, and so it was moved instead of Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that's the basic understanding of the Bible, of the New Testament. A couple points I want to finish off, and that is this. The reason it's important to understand what the types of literature is exactly why the early church positioned them in the way they did as they organized them. The writings of Jesus, Matthew, or the speaking and traditions of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, take a preeminence over that follows. Does it mean that the others are not inspired? No. But I think anyone would agree that if Jesus says something and you can clearly understand it, we're going to pay attention and give that more authority in our life than some obscure passage from, say, Obadiah, or something from Paul's writing that we don't necessarily understand, given the fact that even Peter said Paul's writings are sometimes difficult for the church to understand. Even at the time, people recognized that. And so the preeminence of the writing gives its place. It's just like the writings of Moses and the Torah take preeminence over the stuff in the Old Testament. While those are still true, and it doesn't mean that they're any less true and that we should get rid of them, if you come across something in the Torah, particularly, say, the Ten Commandments, you're going to hold that to a certain point higher authority than you are to some obscure passage, perhaps, in Judges where it says everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And you're like, that's probably not a good idea. It doesn't make it less valid, but it will take less authority, and we will give it less credence of authority of our life. So, the purpose of understanding the different types of literature in the Bible is where they fall into the traditions and how we treat them, and with respect into our Christian life and existence as we walk. Right? Alright, hopefully you learned something, and if not, watch it again. And if this is just you're watching the New Testament, go back and check the video for the Old Testament. There's more to learn there as well. Alright, see you later. Bye.